about the question of faith. Now, how religious are we as a nation is something we often ask ourselves. And of course, one measurement is the last census, which showed that we're less religious than ever before. You might remember that for the first time last year, those who ticked no religion on their census form overtook the number of those who ticked Catholic, which is still the biggest single denomination in the country. And at the same time, while the numbers are falling in the Christian religions, there's been a massive growth in Hinduism, Buddhism and Islam since 1991. Of course, all numbers being relative, because it should be noted the percentage of Christians in total is still between 51 and 52% of the population. But those ticking no religion rose from 22.6% to 29.6%. Answering that question is not compulsory, by the way. Now, one of the interesting questions of the cohort who tick no religion is the difference between those who might be atheist or those who might have belief but don't attend church or aren't overtly religious, and perhaps more curiously still, those who were once religious and no longer believe. So what is it like to leave a religion? And what about publicly renouncing your faith when you grew up in a strict religious family? Well, that's the story of our next guest. Joining us from Melbourne is Sadia Hamid, a self-described ex-Muslim. She's the spokesperson for the Council of Ex-Muslims of Britain and is in Australia to speak at an event titled Losing Your Religion, which is organised by the Secular Party of Australia. Sadia, welcome to The Drum.
Hi, thank you, Julia. Thank you for having me.
Now, can you tell us about your story, first of all? Why did you walk away from the faith that you grew up with?
Well, initially it was just because I was bored at 15. It wasn't very interesting. It was just really repetitive. And I just wasn't interested. And then at the age of 19, my grandparents organised an arranged marriage for me. I got engaged and then I went back to religion. I became really, really religious, in fact. I read lots and lots of books about my right as a woman in Islam, my right as a wife in Islam, and my rights around divorce, inheritance, and I really didn't like what I was reading. And the reason why we ex-Muslims find it important to call ourselves ex-Muslims rather than just atheists is because apostasy and blasphemy is still punishable in various Muslim countries around the world. So it's important for us to identify ourselves as ex-Muslims, not just atheists. I mean, if you line up an ex-Christian, an ex-Jew and an ex-Muslim, the only one who is likely to face repercussions or even death is an ex-Muslim.
So what was the response of your own family, of the people around you?
I didn't really give them much choice, to be honest. I left. My parents know, and I still talk to them, but the rest of the community that I grew up with, I have no contact at all.
Right. So do you think that in other families there would have been a risk of death?
Yes, absolutely. We've had cases of honour killings in the West. It's not unknown for ideological differences, and that's absolutely one of the huge risks that they face.
But what about those people who are more progressive within Islam, the moderate Islams, Muslims, who would say, well, we don't agree with those attitudes towards women. There's different ways of reading, you know, the Holy Book, and we don't agree with the attitudes towards divorce, for example, who are trying to modernise or reinterpret some of those scriptures. How do you view their efforts?
Great, I think it's fantastic, and I would stand in support with them, but I'd also ask for their support. A lot of the time we, as ex-Muslims, we face quite a lot of criticism from those liberal Muslims. Some of them are supportive, and I will say we have a lot of liberal Muslims that are on side and stand alongside with us, but then we also equally have a huge number of them that are critical of us and our movement. And I would suggest that they argue with those that popularise the harmful interpretations of Islam rather than arguing with us.
So would you say your argument is with all of Islam, or, you know, fundamentalist aspects of Islam.
Islamist interpretations of Islam. But
Yeah.
I mean, I personally, on a personal level, dislike Islam. And it's not just Islam. I dislike all religions. I'm not just an atheist. I call myself an anti-theist. I don't like religion. And I think that I have a right to say that.
Yeah. And why all religions? Why don't you like religion?
Because all religions are misogynistic and patriarchal, and I don't like patriarchy as a woman. I think it's my duty to kind of speak out against misogyny and patriarchy.
Okay, now if I can bring you in here at Maha, because you know, as a Muslim woman who's also spoken out against misogyny, how do you view this experience?
Well, I think she has the right to feel and choose her own way in life. And as a Muslim, as an Australian Muslim, I don't have any say in what she does and what she doesn't. But I just, on one point is that you already come from a place of disliking people. Disliking something, you already put me on a platform.
But actually, we don't target people. Our organisation talks about the ideology, not the individual. We intentionally try and separate, and we've got no interest in disliking. I mean, at no point do we say we dislike Muslims. Our families, our loved ones, the people we care about, the people that we grew up with, they are Muslim. We have no interest
in on that. Yeah, I fully agree with you. I'm not here to debate, and I will not debate that, because I have no right to debate you as a woman you have every right to choose what you want to choose. But for me, as an Australian Muslim woman, I'm really in the same position in a way where my life is threatened in certain ways, where my voice is continuously being drowned by those that don't agree with my philosophy, those that don't agree with the way I do things. So it's either, life is not about black or white. You know, good on you. That's your choice. You make that choice and I will support you in that choice. But please, I would love for you just to think about the loving from the heart to the heart, understanding where other people. I feel I am so proud of my own faith. I walk with my faith. But it's not about that piece of cloth that I put on my head. It is about the faith that is in my heart, that I would love you for whoever you are. Whether you are an atheist or not, you are a creation of God. So for me, I sincerely, sincerely believe that when we come from a place of not liking something, it puts us off the other side. I would love for you to say exactly what you just said. You have a family, we all come here together, we live together. If we come from a place of criticising in a way that them and us, we will never be able to come together.
I think that, I think that's completely wrong. I mean, me and my partner, we have differing ideas. There's things that we debate about, there's things that we disagree about, but I don't love him any less. And disagreeing with his ideas doesn't mean that I disagree with him or disagree with his person.
Yes.
So I mean, there's a very clear-cut difference between disagreeing with somebody's ideas and disliking that person, and that's the kind of, we try and make a clear differentiation between the two.
That's right. Yeah,
Now,
I fully agree.
Sadia, I mean, I'm interested in both of your views on this, but if I could just ask you, Sadia, about how difficult it is to speak kind of within this space as a Muslim woman. For example, on this show, we have difficulty in having debates about what's happening internally within Islam, about about criticisms and about disagreements. Partly because of a legitimate fear from some of our guests that just then stirs up Islamophobia and that they will get targeted as a result of it. What's your view about how to manage that?
I think it's important to remember equality. What we're asking for is equality, not priority. When you start prioritizing a set of people or a set of ideas, that's when things become dangerous. And if something isn't, I tell people not to consider just themselves, because we kind of take quite a lot in our everyday lives as individuals. I ask people to think about their kids. If something's not right for your children, then it shouldn't be right for another person's child. And similarly, you know, we've had this debate in Britain about child veiling and child fasting. Now, if you were to have a white child that was starved all day, child services would be called, they'd be removed from that family more than likely for neglect, whereas when it is a child from an Islamic background, we can't discuss that. But a child's being starved for a whole day.
We can. I'm sorry, we can discuss that. We're having that conversation here, and we can discuss that because you know, part of our Islamic principles is not put a child in danger. That's child abuse, and that's violence against children. That's totally against Islamic principles.
But you're
sorry.
saying that, but actually on the whole...
Oh no, in Australia we're very much in advance.
There's a huge hype around Islamophobia, and we're terrified of having any of these discussions because we can't abuse Islam. And this is, I bring it back to the same issue, you know. We're talking about discussing Islam. We're not talking about Muslims, the people, and that's really important to kind of separate the two.
But Maha, can I ask you though? I mean, is it not a valid point that there are a lot of Muslims who fear criticising their religion or different parts of their faith or different parts of their community because of the response that they'll have?
Look, there's two parts to that question.
Yep.
Because it's not about fear. Because who am I to criticise something I don't know much about? I am not a Muslim scholar. So if I criticise a particular aspect of a scholarly Islamic principles, I have no right. The same way would I come to Christians, would I be able to debate about policies not knowing and criticise policies of government or other policies? And I think we can't reduce a religion.
You definitely don't have to be a scholar to criticise religion. I mean, you know, if you see atrocities committed in the name of any beliefs, it's easy to say that this is wrong.
We do that. We stand up to say, we stand up continuously. I take on the leadership role here and with no fear whatsoever, standing up against violence against women. And I've done that for the last 35 years and I'm proudly doing that.
Yeah,
and I stand with my other sisters and I do a lot of work with child abuse. Yep. So it's not just about criticising. I think we've got to be informed enough to be able to be educated, to really have a healthy debate. And can I really say, I think the Muslim community, whether we say, oh, we're not actually attacking or targeting Muslims, we're targeting Islam. Right now, you can't tell the difference. If I walk down the street, no one's going to say, well, hello, you're a Muslim woman, I'll leave you alone. You're Muslim.
But that same thing happens to me, that's the thing. I experience anti-Muslim bigotry just like you do. At the end of the day, somebody who's wanting to target an individual, they're not looking at what their actual beliefs are.
But you don't wear
they're
a
just
veil.
looking at...
You're not recognised as a Muslim.
I don't have to.
I don't recognised as a Muslim.
Those that are wanting to commit bigoted acts aren't going to look at what you're wearing or what you're doing.
Let's be real here. Can I just be real here? You cannot put me and you in the same place. If we walk down the street, I will be more targeted than you. Let's be honest here. We can't just continuously say, you and I are equal at many levels, but you have more privileges. I don't have the privilege of walking in a safe environment. I can walk out of the studio and I will fear for my safety.
You wearing a veil is a choice. That is a choice that you've made.
It doesn't make a difference whether I wear it out of choice or no choice. The people outside don't see that as a choice.
Okay, I just want to bring in the rest of the panel here to see your views on just the openness of debate here, and whether there is Sadia has spoken at length in a number of forums about the fact that a fear of Islamophobia means that there isn't an open debate, and that in fact sometimes cripples the left in having a discussion about it. Is there any merit to that?
I think there is merit. I mean, there's no platforming that happens, from left activists who won't let women speak. And so there is a level of patriarchal, not letting women speak or not letting religious women address their faith. So the left needs to have a reckoning with itself as well as the right on the way that we communicate about religion. I mean, the simple fact is that, like you said, 30% of Australians chose no religion. So there is a lot of gray area then that needs to be discussed between people of opposing faiths.
But one thing we've discussed a lot on this show, Sadia, is some of the debates within religion. For example, criticisms of the church and their attitudes towards women, and needing to really address some cultural issues regarding domestic violence and so on. But you have been critical of feminism, of feminists, for being silent on questions that you consider vital when it comes to the Islamic faith. Can you explain what you mean by that?
Yeah, absolutely. So feminism has been really, really silent about this double standard. In fact, actually, they actively support some of the oppression that women face. I mean, the fact that you have a celebration, World Hijab Day, and you have women that don't even understand that in some parts of the world it is a symbol of oppression, a tool of oppressing women, and the women are freely donning the hijab, a symbol of our oppression. To celebrate that is a huge betrayal. To not discuss that a woman can be beaten by her husband. The Quran actively says that a woman can be beaten by her husband.
I think it says lightly discipline. But my understanding is that's not...
I can't lightly beat my husband.
I'm not going to get into that conversation, but can I just go back to...
I can't lightly beat my husband.
Women,
that's ridiculous.
Can I just say here that feminists have been standing up for the rights of women to choose.
To choose to be beaten?
No,
and to be raped?
Please. No.
Of course.
I'm talking about the dress. I'm talking about choice of my dress. My choice of my dress is a sign of my own freedom. It's my spiritual connection.
So why have no feminists spoken out for the women in support of the women in Iran? In Iran, women are taking off their hijabs.
But just because you don't know something, it doesn't mean it's not happening. I'm sorry, Sadia, please go outside of your little circle.
Please don't patronise me and accuse me of not knowing.
Me,
that's very patronising.
No.
Sadia, can you accept, though, that there are different strands within a religion, that there are different ways of viewing women, and that some women are speaking out within that tradition?
The fact is that these passages exist in the religious text. You have to acknowledge that before you can challenge it. And a lot of women will, particularly women that are extremely religious and protective of Islam, will gloss over the fact that you can beat your wife, or that the hadith says that you can rape your wife.
Can I please say that?
Oh, yeah.
I cannot sit here and be told that I am glossing over something. That's where you're really patronising me, but it's not about me. This is about the faith that I belong to. There are different strands, and I do not believe that my principle will allow me to sit here and listen to say that I agree with beating of wives. That is really, it makes my heart bleed. I'm really sorry about that.
So, I mean, look, I challenge the men that are popularising that definition then. That's what I'm saying.
Sadia, I think it's a salient point, because we've had a big discussion, as you've had in Britain and particularly in Australia, regarding domestic violence. And there are, of course, there has been a discussion about those verses, and I don't think you can find a Muslim scholar in Australia who would support the argument that it is legitimate to beat your wife. But there are certainly some imams who have expressed that view. But I think it's particularly sensitive because Maha has spent decades looking after women who've worked in domestic violence.
So have I. I mean, that's my professional background as well, domestic violence and sexual violence. And I've certainly seen the silence on the part of general society when it comes to Islam and these issues. And that's why we're still exhausting ourselves.
That's exactly what I was saying to Chris. What was I saying to you outside? My voice will always be drowned. Isn't that what I just shared that with you earlier? That's exactly what I mean.
We're listening to your voice.
My voice is always drowned. Doesn't matter how I project it. I cannot sit here and justify what I've been doing for many years. And that's how it is. I'm sorry, but that's how it feels right now.
Okay.
Julia, can I just add just a little bit there? And so much of this debate often comes down to very difficult arguments and criticisms rather than talking about the issues themselves. And people feel very strongly about their faith and their spirituality and their religion. And so when some of the debate that happens in our community about religion, and then they link that with domestic violence and other things, I think that people of those faiths feel very offended by that. And I think that we need to look at the issues. Domestic violence is a scourge in our community. It doesn't matter what religion it comes from. And so I think that these debates need to be respectful about the issues, thinking about how personal faith is to people, and we can see how impactful the work that Maha has done over the years, and how that impacts her when we talk about her religion, and perhaps she may feel she's been criticised because of her religion. So I think that the debate needs to be much more respectful about issues and not necessarily about the religion itself.
Exactly. And actually, you know, we compare two separate elements of Christianity and Islam. In Christianity, you have the rule of thumb, but if somebody was to quote that today, they would be considered insane. They would be, you know, institutionalized. However, if somebody was to do that in Islam, and we still see videos come out regularly of women being abused by their husbands and nobody saying anything. And Maha, you know, I don't mean to make you feel like crap. I really, really don't. And I'm sure you've done amazing work, and I'm really sorry I'm not aware of the work that you have done. But on the whole, you have to admit that it's an uphill struggle trying to fight this all the time. And what we want is these hideous passages from the Quran that say you can beat your wife, whether lightly or not. That doesn't bother me. I don't care. That needs to, well, no, but it says it, doesn't it? You have to admit, Maha, tell me it doesn't say it. Please say it.
Okay, I think we've already had the discussion on this. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. You have an important voice, and we're fascinated by what you have to say about your faith and about your work. Thank you so much for joining us this evening, Sadia.
Thank you.
But given our conversation earlier in the show, I just want to go back to Maha now. I just want to iterate that you have a very important voice, Maha. And we really value you on this show. I know how hard you've worked in your community and outside of your community to educate people about assumptions and about myths and about stereotypes. You're a person of great faith, and you always conduct yourself with great grace. So I don't want you to ever feel drowned out. Do you have anything that you want to say as a consequence of that? And I regret that caused any distress.
No, that's okay. No, it's just about, I mean, what I was just coming through while I was driving, something came up on my Twitter, and it just really fits in very well with what we're talking about. It's about perception. This woman was going on an airline. She had a therapy pet with her. It was a hamster. And then the person at the desk said to her, you can't get your hamster on the plane, so you just go and flush it down the toilet. She actually went down and flushed it down the toilet. So to me, right now, I thought, what the perception of what we hear and what we actually do, right. It just sort of, for me, it summed up at my conversation earlier, because I understand there are lots of messages, and there's so many people who are suffering right now, not just from domestic violence, from violence against so many things that have no voice. And when some of us have the voice to be able to bring out those issues that we are responsible for, I just wish and hope and pray that we listen with our hearts so that we can make a difference, even though if it's just a little bit at a time, without just continuously humming down on certain things. If you know something exists, why do you ask me whether it exists or not?
Yeah.
Thank you for that.
Thank you, Maha.